all thank Anna Sackett for putting the template together for this workshop, putting the workshop together. Give her a round of applause. Sorry I don't have a slideshow. What we call in the United States a muggle. I basically live in 1984. Sorry about that. I will, if you lend me an ear, I'll share my story. So, when it comes to life before mental illness, it's probably like a lot of your lives, full of neglect and abuse, mistreatment, just general turmoil. My parents were drug users. They abused me, and my father would abuse my mother. This is what I learned. I grew up in this environment, and because of this, I learned to seek out relationships like that, and I learned to become an abuser myself. Because it's what I knew, and it's what I was comfortable with. So these conditions are what started the onset of mental illness for me, and it caused a gap in my mental health. But because I was dealing with unhealthy boundaries and unsustainable relationships. The onset of mental illness was sneaky. Came like a thief in the night, I like to say. Becoming ill was a long process. It was full of denial, ritualistic in nature, and abuse towards me and me towards others. I'm so far removed now from that situation that I don't even remember what it was like to be ill, and I don't remember what my feelings and thoughts were like at the time. But I can shed some light on one of my behaviors. And that is, I used to make these suicide threats to my friends and family, partially because I was indeed suicidal, but it also just made the people around me easier to manipulate. My friends and family did not behave properly to this type of behavior. They should have made a mental health intervention and got me into the hospital so I can start medication and counseling. Instead, they stigmatized the entire mental illness idea, for this reason I could never recover, because I was surrounding myself with these kinds of people. They called me paranoid, which I was, and they called me too sensitive, which I also was. Among this line of friends, I just became more sick, and I could never recover. With no beacon to guide me through this turmoil, I became depressed. And when you're depressed, you're depressing, and your life is depressing. I remember waking up each day knowing that if I left the house, I would have an anxiety attack. And so I wouldn't, and I would isolate in my house and just become more depressed. And on the rare occasion that I actually did leave the house, I would have that anxiety attack, because at that point, everything was psychological and psychosomatic. I was unemployed for 4 years. I was taking advantage of my girlfriend at the time and her abundance of resources. One day, I decided to threaten her with suicide, and I also threatened to kill her. And that's the day my recovery began, sadly enough. I was so angry. I don't even remember now what the argument was about. So, nevertheless, I ended up in a psychiatric hospital. I was there for 10 days. And the whole time I was there, I was in complete denial about what I had done. And I had flat affect. I had no, no matter how disturbing things were, I just didn't care. I just straight face. Even still, the case manager at this hospital got me a referral to North Range. This is a company in my county that deals with treating mental illness. And it's also my clubhouse's hospice agency. And luckily, that is true because this is what introduced me to the clubhouse in the first place. So this one event led to this path of recovery, sadly enough. I was given a counselor, I was issued a counselor and a nurse practitioner who could give me medicine to treat bipolar disorder. And this counselor issued me this referral to Frontier House. Since then, I've changed tremendously, and I'm happy to have. It took a little while, but I have virtually no disabling symptoms, and the ones that are, I can cope with very well. I have a job now as a behavioral health worker. Somewhere I never thought I'd be. And I'm also a driver. And for the company, North Range, that saved my life. I now have very healthy relationships, asserted, healthy boundaries, and I'm more mindful of my actions than I ever have been. This is because of a holistic change that happened within me, of which Frontier House was a fulcrum. There's this word, metanoia. It means a complete change of mind, body, and soul. And this is what had happened to me because of Frontier House. The transcending mental illness happens when you decide to stop stigmatizing and accept unconditionally what is going on with you. Luckily, Frontier House creates people like that. Nowadays, my routine is centered around work, which is an idea I got from Clubhouse in the work order day. And I've not forgotten everything that Clubhouse has done for me. And as a result, I visit my Clubhouse every day, unless I'm vomiting or something. After all, it was people from Clubhouse who helped me apply for these jobs. And much more than that, taught me to accept and be mindful of my own problems. Clubhouse saved my life. Since my most severe mental illness episodes, I've made amends with most of the people that I hurt. Regrettably, though, I will never recover some of these friends because of my evils. But admittedly, some of those people were not very savory, and I'm glad to be rid of them. The people who are most important to me still are, and I'm happy they're still in my life. I can assert healthy boundaries with them, and they can assert healthy boundaries with me. And I'm super proud of my family and myself for breaking past the barrier of stigma, and it's all because of my story. Gone from a place of fear, stigma, and hate to a place of love, tolerance, and knowledge. All because of this story. And from this I learned that it is ethically my responsibility to share my story. And thus I am bound to wander this world, crushing stigma wherever I go and wherever it exists. I'm committed to serve the mental health community for the rest of my life, through Clubhouse and through employment. And I will always advocate for those who are committed to recovery. Lastly, I hope to continue to recover. I have developed an alcohol dependence, trying to self-medicate bipolar symptoms. You might notice I have this bracelet. I'm on a medicine called Vivitrol, and it helps curb the appetite for alcohol. So that's why I'm wearing that. Because recovery's never over, you guys. It requires more and more mindfulness the longer you're in it. It requires a supportive community like Clubhouse. That is why I will be an active member the rest of my life.